How much do the horse spears cost?
It costs one horse their entire life of slavery for you to enjoy a few minutes of pleasure. Is that fair?
I mean, we work with them, you know.
Do we work with them, or is this actual oppression?
I'm not sure.
We breed them specifically so that we can make them commodities to we breed them specifically, right? We reproduce them, we sell them so that they can be used specifically to serve human interests. They don't get any interests in their life. Their entire life is meant to serve human pleasure in the 21st century. How do we justify that? And do you think that's fair? And would you consider that a relationship of working together? The horse doesn't have a choice here. They were born into an industry that commodifies them. That's slavery, brother.
Something to think about, Phil.
Yeah.
Thoughts.
Right? So let's be fair to our fellow Earthlings and treat them with the same dignity and respect we want for each other. The world would be a much better place, even amongst each other. Because one of the first oppressions we learn is speciesism as children. Right? We're taught this animal's good for this animal's good for that, this is a bad animal, that's a good animal. And then it's just the next step when you're older, some person comes along and says, see those that type of people there, those type of humans, they're bad humans. Then you got racism, right? See the women, they're not as important as you because you're a man. That's sexism. The founding oppression is what we do to animals, and then we just take it up a notch and we do it to humans. So if we get rid of speciesism and we stop discriminating against other animals, then how do we become racist and sexist when we respect everybody that's sentient? I mean, we certainly never tried exploring that option, right? Yeah, something to think about.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a great day, guys. Happy Canada Day.
Well, and that's right, because consent is an important thing, right? And if you cannot get consent, you probably shouldn't be using something. I'm against all animal use of any animals because I view...
Like even having a pet dog? Or?
Well, it depends on the intent, right? Intent is very important, just like...
Just as a pet?
Well, it depends. Do you have them living with you strictly for your pleasure? Or do you view them more as an adopted child, right? Like if you go and adopt a child, do you view that adopted child as property? Or do you view them as your equal and family member?
I view it as my family member.
Right, and that's what we're saying, is just to change the mindset from this is a thing for my pleasure to this is an individual who is under my guardianship and it is my obligation to care for them, right? And that would entail making sure people aren't, getting a kitten, wait till the kitten's 8 years old, and they go, oh, this kitten's not so cute anymore. Let's just toss him to the shelter, get a new kitten, right? And what that is, that's the circle of use, right? Because you get a new one, use it, and then you get rid of it. And so what we're proposing is to break the cycle of using, right? Where you help the ones that already exist, that need help, the old cats, the old horses, the old dogs, the ones people don't want. We need to help them because they're here because of us, right? But
where we live, there's a lot of Mennonites that still use horses to plow the fields.
Right, that's a
thing,
great question. Now that has to do with religion, correct? Now, because that's their religion, is they don't want to use technology, to my understanding.
Yeah.
Right, now...
I don't know if that's...
Okay,
that may be part of the religion.
Yeah, that's my understanding of it. But how I usually address that is, just because I have a religious belief, does that entitle me to cause actual harm to another individual?
That is true.
Right? Because let's say I was of a religion where women were not equal to me. Does my belief in that religion allow me to commit an actual harmful act to another individual, right? Because we all have the protected right of belief, right? But when a belief becomes an action that causes an actual harm to someone else, that is when you've crossed that line.
I see your point.
Right.
I'm thinking back to where before technology, then
right.
when there wasn't.
Right, and you know what?
Right,
and there's nothing we can do about that, right? And what I would say is what we've done in the past is a very poor justification for what we do in the future, right? Because Canada was also built by the Cross Canada Railway, which was built by slave Chinese labor. Tens of thousands of Chinese people died building that railway. Does that justify that same type of behavior today?
Yeah.
Right?
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Well, we have horses actually.
Right, and you know what? People need to give horses homes. Horses need to have somewhere to go.
We have a 25-year-old horse that we've had, you know.
Well, I would respectfully disagree that they need to be ridden, but I would definitely agree they need exercise. They need, like any other animal like us, we need to be engaged, right?
Yeah,
we need to work ourselves,
like,
right?
He does it on his own, right?
Yeah.
We put up a jump in the arena, and I let him run around, and like he does it on his own. Like I don't force him.
Right, and that's what I'm talking about, is them doing their natural type behaviors, right? Well, they're not here right now, but this is standing here with all that equipment in your mouth, just waiting to be used. That is not a natural behavior for a horse. That's why what we propose for this situation is for them to get electric carriages, which cities all over the world are adopting, right? Because it would fit with the aesthetics of the area, but it would be also ethical and progressive. And then they could use the money that the extra money that they're making, because you have this huge new pool of people who will now ride this, right? Much lower operating costs. They like to bring horses out of this cycle of use. But the only problem is what they're doing here is they're continuing the demand by using them, right? Where if they were just taking them out, using the money they're getting from a slightly altered business, then they could change their farm into an educational sanctuary where people could, instead of seeing horses here like this, they could go to the farm. You could go right up to them. You could meet them, right? You could learn about them. It would be a much more enriching experience for everybody. They win, they make more money. The horses win because they continue to come out of this cycle, right? And then we win because we can go do something else.
They put horseshoes on them, right?
Oh yeah, like there's.
Because I know the road's not great for their feet or anything.
No, and being a guardian of horses, you would be much more aware of that than I would.
Has shoes on the front, so.
Right.
Because it does hurt their feet, you know. So that's good.
Right. Yeah, and it's great. And thank you so much for coming to talk to me. Hey, no problem. Happy Canada Day. I hope you guys are enjoying your day.
Yes, we are.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Can you explain a little bit more about what's going on with your protest?
Sure. So, horses have been around on the planet, surviving, evolving for 50 million years. Humans have enslaved them for our interests for the last 6,000 years. We don't believe that just justifies continuing to do this, especially in the 21st century. We have cars, we have technology to move ourselves around. This is just a simple pleasure, and I don't think that we can justify using them anymore.
So you're feeling like this is harming the horses?
Well, regardless of if it harms them or not, how do we justify enslaving an entire species just to serve our interests? Like, do you think that this is a life for a horse?
So, are our domestic pets enslaved?
In a way, they are, because what we do is we commodify their bodies. What defines slavery is if you commodify someone, if you are their owner, if they are property to you, then they are enslaved. And we buy and sell horses, and we buy and sell dogs and cats, and we mass produce them as a commodity to be profited from. So yes, absolutely, they are in a way a product, and what we're buying is companionship, right? We're buying somebody that will exist as our property for us to use for companionship.
Getting that companionship in return. You don't believe that our domestic pets are getting something out of their lives that they spend with us?
Right. Of course, we've bred them over thousands of years for traits that we find desirable, including the shape and color and length of their body parts and stuff, as well as their mannerisms and characteristics. Those were bred into them. Dogs would not naturally, like their natural species, they come from wolves. they wouldn't naturally want to cohabitate with humans and please humans. But we've bred dogs for thousands of years for the trait for them to respond kindly to humans, right? That's a trait that we bred into them. And the other thing is, at the end of the day, they are legal property. So if you're done with your dog and you no longer find them an interest, or if you find them too problematic to have, they're not like children. You can actually dispose of them. You can literally take your dog to a vet and say, I don't want this dog anymore. Kill them.
The majority of us consider our dogs a part of our family.
Absolutely. I understand that.
I mean, it's a
Yeah.
generalization that doesn't apply to most people.
Well, but it does, because to the interests of the animals, they don't have any, because legally they are just property. So they don't have any legal right to exist. They only exist if a human finds value in them. And I think that's wrong to look at other sentient beings in that manner. I think they should be given legal personhood and have the same protections against being exploited and commodified like humans.
And so how would that be achieved? Like,
Yeah, it's just a simple process of
like our dogs, our cats, our domestic animals, our horses, like they're not free animals. There isn't a situation that they can become that.
exactly. We don't have a place in nature for them because we've bred them for thousands of years for our interests, and we've stolen them from nature. They don't have a home. But the good thing is that their original kin, the wolves, still do have. Like their species will continue living in the wild. It's just they won't continue to exist as our property or what the abominations that we've created over thousands of years.
So, like, I recognize the point of view, but we're not going to free our animals.
No, what I suggest, sure, and I don't think when I talk about liberating them, I'm not talking about necessarily a physical thing. I'm talking about the mental thing of thinking of them as property and treating them as property by allowing them to be bred and sold as commodities. But what we would suggest, that if we can get to the point where we agree that it's what we're doing is wrong, is we continue to care for and love the animals that we have. We just agree to stop breeding them, and eventually we won't have to worry about them anymore.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of us that don't do that. We adopt our animals from shelters and we
Yeah.
take care of them.
Yeah, but if we don't stop that cycle of violence, right, it's a cycle. So if we continue to allow the breeding, a great number of animals continue to be disposed of as property, and people just discard them, or they toss them in the street or hurt them. You know, we got to stop that violence. So the key to that is stopping the breeding, and we take care of all of them, and then we just adopt them until they're no longer an issue to be worried about. And it's for their best interest, because humans are not very good when we treat others as commodities. That's why we got rid of slavery for humans, and that's why we respect women as equals to men. The oppression is interrelated. So as long as we continue to not recognize non-human animals as our equals, in the sense that we have to be better to them, we're going to continue to be violent and oppressive to each other. It's all interconnected. It's a different way of thinking.
All right.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the discussion.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Electric carriages that still look old, fit with the aesthetics of the area, but provide an ethical green alternative, so it's old but progressive at the same time. And then keep the horses under your care, but keep them on the farm, let them live more as horses, you know, and maybe turn into an educational sanctuary so people can come and meet them, you know, teach people about them and learn about them.
Right,
But their care
are going to be able to keep them. I'm on the other side of the fence. Not saying right or wrong, but
No.
they still have to take care of them, feed them, house them.
And that's the beauty of transitioning from this business model to an electric carriage business.
Get into this.
Because to operate an electric carriage is exponentially cheaper than this.
Believe me, I understand. I know EVs, but okay. So then, how do you feel? If that's the stance, how do you feel about things like assisted living dogs? Because they're also enslaved.
exactly the same thing.
But so you would rather not have a dog that's going to help somebody who's vision impaired or hearing impaired.
I would rather take those resources and invest them into a better solution for that person. Instead of investing all these resources into training these animals, buying these animals, doing this, why don't we redirect those resources into maybe getting actual humans to assist other humans, right? And then we could maybe come up with some more technological solutions to these problems that would actually help these people get more independence on their own and be more of an ethical solution to the problem.
Maybe more technology-based solution.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sonar or radar around them. Hazards, it warns you.
Right. Or even they're getting very close to actually creating a bionic eye, which is actually like a mechanical eye, which can enable a totally blind person to actually see themselves, right? And if that was you in that situation, would you rather have a dog show you around, or would you rather be able to have your own sight?
Right. Oh, I love dogs. I want both. But
right?
the dog's a pet.
Right. But that's the thing with pets, right? Is we think it's also wrong to breed animals specifically for companionship. But yes, because
now we have to disagree.
But let me explain. That is just a different type of use, right? But what we should do is all these animals that already exist, we all need to care for them and provide them safe homes, right? We need to become not their owners, but their guardians, right? We need to bring them into our homes not for our benefit, but for their benefit.
But you don't think they benefit from being in a home environment and
No,
being cared for
I'm not saying they don't,
loved
but in the current way that it is, in the current way people think about it, people view cats, dogs as things, right? You get a kitten.
Oh, I don't. It's a child to me. It's a child. It's a child to you.
And to a lot of people it is, but the problem is, to a lot of people they're not. They're just throwaway items. And as soon as they get old, they're like, I want a new one, right? So what we need to do is make it so when you're going to bring another person like that into your home, it's like adopting a child. You are obligated to provide care and to be a guardian for them. That is a lifetime commitment. That is not just...
It's a child. Lifetime.
Right.
They can't take care of themselves.
Right, and that's the problem, is this commodification of life, where they're literally property. They're not persons. And person doesn't mean you're a human, but it means that you're a living being and you're deserving of the same level of respect we give each other, right? Just like it's wrong for me to think of you as less than me because you're a woman, just because of an insignificant difference in our bodies.
Well, then I'd have to give you a wedgie and call it a draw.
Right?
Your husband's going to get really mad because we're out here. Yeah.
Oh, you guys are great.
I appreciate
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Enlightenment there.
Thank you for talking to us.
Zach, don't they rescue those horses?
What are you guys protesting?
The use of horses.
For what?
Being used. They're commodities.
Was this actually taken in Niagara?
This was actually taken right down the street there after the horse ran down the sidewalk and crashed. And like, this is the news article, this is the headline. You can go on their website, you can find this. We don't believe that any living being should be used as a product or a commodity. We all deserve a fundamental level of respect.
What do you suggest they do with these horses if they don't?
Interesting idea. We actually have a great idea for them to transition their business into an electric carriage business. We know they're legal. We know they exist. There's 2 in this town that are privately owned.
Do you know where these horses come from?
They're bought from slaughter auctions.
What do you suggest we do with the horses that don't, that aren't bought by these people?
when you participate in the demand for horses, what you're doing is you're feeding into the circle of use.
Have you been to a slaughterhouse auction
Yes,
before?
I have.
Okay, and can you tell me what it's like there?
It's horrific.
Horrible. Yeah, so you're suggesting we let the horses go to slaughter
Well,
so we can fight it?
No. What I'm saying is we need to stop the demand for their use, which is the actual solution to the slaughter, because you can't buy them all. No matter what you do, you can't buy them all.
I know.
And the problem with, and every rescuer will tell you this, is you never purchase animals, because as long as someone profits from their existence, they're going to continue to produce them. So you're just feeding this never-ending cycle of breed, use, kill. Breed, use, kill. If you want to stop the slaughter, you need to stop the use. You need to stop the demand for the product. And unfortunately, their lives are what the product is. That's
what humans are too.
But we have
not in the same way.
We have much more free will and choices with what happens with our lives.
I have a suggestion for you too.
What's
actually.
that?
There's a restaurant in downtown Toronto that serves horses from slaughterhouses in Quebec.
Yes.
I should go and protest.
There actually, La Palette, there was quite an extensive protest that did happen there.
Somebody should protest them again. We'd enjoy that.
Yes.
That's already being done, but we're here to try to stop the cycle of violence by getting people to stop contributing to businesses that profit from their bodies. And
to be honest, we have horses, and we're in the sport of riding, and we ride about 6 times a week with our horses.
Right.
So, I mean, I understand that you guys don't think they should, but we do try to make sure they're very well taken care of. There's certain things that I guess we do agree with. We would prefer that they don't end up like that. Like, that's a horrific accident.
Right, because
absolutely horrifying.
What we would prefer to see is right now all animals are legally considered property, right?
Yes,
they have no more rights essentially than a table or a chair. And we all understand, because we all know animals, that the only difference between them and us is the bodies that we happen to be born into. So what we would like to see is people change from viewing and the legal status of animals as property to recognizing them as persons with interests, and those interests need to be looked after. They're not all going to disappear overnight, and we can't just release them into wild, because that's not.
As long as you're not into the PETA things.
That's nonsensical.
We're like anti-PETA people.
Okay.
Because PETA does not believe that animals have a fundamental right to life.
Yeah.
They actually euthanize quite a few domesticated animals, and we're completely against any euthanasia of animals. We totally support people bringing animals into their lives and caring for them, because we believe as a society that's our obligation, because the reason they exist is our fault, and we need to own up to that, and we need to care for the ones that exist, right? So we need people to be guardians, not owners of horses, but guardians of horses, right? Just like an adopted child. You don't view an adopted child as property, right? And when you adopt a child, that comes with a certain set of responsibilities, right? And legal obligations, right? You are legally obligated to care for that child. They're now under your guardianship, right? We would like to see a similar change made for animals, so they're not being dumped at shelters, killed, used like this purely for profit.
And has there been any response on the part of the company, or?
The company obviously hates us, right? Because our message is it doesn't make sense, right? Because they see our message as threatening, but what they're not doing is listening to the alternative, which is actually going to be more profitable for them. It's going to allow them to continue to take horses out of the cycle while at the same time not using them. And it's going to help the town, because it's going to turn this town into a beacon of positive progressive change, right? And that's why if they adopt the electric carriage business, we've thoroughly researched electric carriages. You can operate them for at least less than a quarter of the cost of one of these carriages. So with that increased profit, you also have an increased market, because now people like us, all the people we've talked to today who disagree with this, are now in your target market, right? And with all that extra money, they can continue to take horses out of the system, right? And they can transition their living facilities instead of into just housing, but now into an educational sanctuary where people can come and learn about horses, meet horses, but in a more natural environment, instead of on the pavement here towing them around. Actually get to meet them, learn about them, right? Does that not, like, that sounds like a reasonable idea, does it not?
No, it does. And actually, I don't know if you're involved in a group of people nationwide or not, but the ones here aren't the worst I've seen. The worst we've seen have been in Quebec City and Montreal.
Montreal has a ban coming January 1st, 2020. It's done.
Because I remember a horse actually died in the streets, I think.
A number of them have over the years.
That's horrible.
They've been fighting for like 20 years there. And they finally got it. Victoria is actually looking at a ban now too, because there was a number of high-profile incidents there as well.
Well, I don't know. I remember actually we were here in the winter and it was minus 30 and they did have the horses going.
We've been here since November 2017. And I mean, we've been out here literally days with snow up to our knees, and town is desolate, and it's literally just us and them sitting there covered in snow.
Yeah, and even our horses, they sit in their stalls with their point.
Yeah, so it really is. What is the purpose of this, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you for speaking to us.
Yeah, no problem.
And you guys have a lovely day.
You too.
Thank you.